Welcome back to Let's Excel Together, you guys. If you remember, a couple weeks ago we talked about for loops, where we defined a number of iterations that we wanted to execute a block of code for. So for example, it was for x equals 1 to 300. That means we would want to loop through the code block 300 times, and then once that happens, it would jump out of the loop. Today we're going to be talking about do-while loops. So we'll be able to set a condition inside of the loop to determine when we need to exit that loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up Excel and our Visual Basic module here. So let's go ahead and set up a scenario here where, let's say we want to add up these cost values until we get to a total cost of $300. Okay, we're just going to say $300 just for example's sake. So we'll go through this step by step. So the first thing we need to do is obviously set up our sub. So I called this sub do while, and then we ended our sub as appropriately. So the first thing we're going to do to start our do while loop is we're going to say do while, and this is where we need to set the condition. So we're going to say do while the range E1 dot value is less than 300. Okay, so we want to execute our for loop until our E1 value is less than 300. Okay, so when we start a do while loop, to close a do while loop, we need to end it with loop. So everything that we want to execute will be inside of this section here. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to continue looping and adding these costs to this cell until our value is less than 300. Okay, or sorry, greater than 300. So we're going to do range E1 dot value equals itself, because we want to add the itself value to the next cost value, E1 dot value plus the range B, the column B, its cost. So we're going to do range B2 dot value. Okay, so as you might already know, if you guys have been doing VBA for quite some time, this is just going to keep adding B2. So it's just going to keep adding 32 to this, 32 to this, 32, instead of going to the next one. Okay, so what we need to do is create a variable so it knows to move down to the next cell and add it to E1. So instead of B2, we're going to set up a variable X. Okay, we're just simply call it X equals, we'll say 2 because that's where we're going to start. So instead of 2, we're going to remove that, and then we're going to concatenate X to it. So you do this by doing and X, which means essentially B2. Okay, so then after we've done that, we need to increment X by 1. So we're going to say X equals X plus 1. So now when it gets to this row, it's going to do X equals itself, which is 2, plus 1, which would be 3. So now when it goes back up to the loop and executes this line, this X will be 3. Okay, and it'll continue to increment until this condition is met. All right, so let's go ahead and step through this code. Remember, on your keyboard, if you press F8, you can do line by line code executions. So we'll do F8, X equals 2, perfect, do while our range value is less than 300. So you'll see that it's blank right now, so if we hover over it, range E1 value equals empty, perfect. Okay, now if we step through this one, it added 32 because we are getting B2 value. B2 value is 32, perfect. Now we're going to increment our X by 1, so now we're going to be on B3. So it's going to loop back again, evaluate to see if our value is still less than 300, which it is, it's only 32, so it continues to execute. We're going to execute this row, and it's going to add 77 to 33, or sorry, 32, and to get 109. We're going to increment again, and just keep looping until you'll see this value just keeps adding. And then once this value exceeds 300, our loop is going to end. Okay, so bam, we're at 316. Okay, so now it's going to loop back and evaluate this condition, do while range is less than 300, which it's not anymore. It's 16 over that. So if we execute this line, you'll see that it doesn't execute this code here. It just ends right at the end sub. So our do while loop knows to only execute until it's less than 300. Okay, so once it exceeds 300, it's done. So let me go and erase this value, and we'll put in, I don't know, we'll do 400, and we'll step through this again, stepping. It's adding the values, and what are we at? We're at 444 now, okay? So now it's going to go back up, evaluate, is this value less than 400? No, it's not, so we're going to exit the for loop. So that's essentially it, you guys. Now, obviously, this application isn't very, can't be used in the real world, but maybe it can, but that's do while loop, you guys. It's a little bit like a for loop, but you can add a condition to it to determine how many times you want the for loop to run. So hopefully this this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you guys can use this in any projects or your work or any, or if it's just a hobby, if you just like learning VBA like I do, then hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Awesome.